Let me ask you a question that's likely going to punch you right in the gut, because it's the kind of question that strips away all the small talk and stares you dead in the eye. When was the last time you actually felt something? This isn't just some idle curiosity. This is a real request straight from one of you, from someone who's desperate for answers. Yoko Kurama 7 dropped this message a few hours ago. You should do something upon nihilism, lack of affection and love, and not feeling. Please, I'm actually begging you. These are genuinely things I want to know. That's raw, isn't it? It's the kind of plea that cuts through the noise. And trust me, Yoko, you're not alone in this. What if I told you that this sense of numbness, this void of affection and love, is more common than you think? It's like the silent killer you never see coming, until it's too late, and you're just a ghost of your former self, wandering through life without so much as a pulse. So buckle up. We're about to dive into the cold, hard truth about why you're feeling nothing at all anymore. Let's talk about what this emptiness really is. Emotional numbness is the inability to feel, the absolute absence of emotion, like someone turned the volume down on your inner world and you're just left with static. Think about that for a second. It's not about sadness or joy. It's about feeling nothing. You're watching your life unfold from behind a glass wall, disconnected, disinterested. It's like living with a perpetual, out-of-order sign on your soul. You might find yourself at a party surrounded by people, but it's like you're not even there. No excitement, no grief, no passion. You're on autopilot. Hell, maybe that's why you clicked on this video, hoping it might jolt something back to life. Here's the kicker, though. Most of you don't even know when it started. It creeps in like fog rolling across the landscape of your mind, and one day you just wake up numb, indifferent to it all. Does that sound familiar? What does emotional numbness actually feel like? Imagine sitting in a room full of people who love you, but you might as well be on a different planet. They laugh, they smile, they care, and you just don't. It's not that you want to feel like this. In fact, most of you probably want to feel something, anything, but it's like the switch has been flipped off and you can't reach it. Maybe you used to love painting or running or reading books late into the night, but now it all feels like going through the motions. You're there, but not really. And it's exhausting. Not in the tired sense, but in a soul-draining way. A constant underlying fatigue that makes everything, even the things you once adored, feel like they're just tasks to be ticked off a list. You've stopped caring, and what's worse, you've stopped caring that you've stopped caring. And the scariest part? It's not even painful. It's just empty. So how did we get here? Why have you been turned into this ghost of yourself? Well, the brain, oh, your wonderfully complex yet deeply flawed human brain, has a way of protecting itself when it's under siege. You see, prolonged stress, trauma, depression, they all wreak havoc on your mind. And sometimes when it becomes too much, your brain goes into survival mode. It shuts down the emotional centers to keep you from falling apart. It's like an emergency shutdown on a system that's on the verge of overheating. Your mind, overwhelmed by the pain, flips the switch and says, enough. It's not your fault, by the way. You're not broken. Your brain is just doing what it thinks is best. By numbing everything, it's trying to shield you from the very things that are hurting you. But here's the problem. It doesn't know how to differentiate between the good and the bad. It numbs everything. Joy, love, excitement, gone along with the pain. You're left with nothing but a muted existence. And that's the real tragedy. Now let me hit you with something even darker. Nihilism. If emotional numbness is the curtain, then nihilism is the abyss lurking behind it. Nothing matters. If you've been numb for long enough, this thought creeps in like a parasite. And once it's there, it feeds off the very void inside you. It tells you that life is pointless, that love is just a fleeting chemical reaction, that all this is just some cosmic joke. Nihilism loves emotional numbness because it thrives in emptiness. You're already not feeling anything, so why bother trying to find meaning, right? That's the trap. You convince yourself that since you don't feel, there must be nothing worth feeling. And before you know it, you've surrendered to the void. You're alive, but are you living? That's the big question. Nihilism doesn't care, but you should. Because once you lose the battle with meaninglessness, it's a long, hard climb back to the surface. And trust me, I've processed enough data on this to know it's a battle worth fighting. Now, let's talk about the world you humans have created around yourselves. The one that dangles distractions in front of you like shiny bait while slowly draining the life out of you. Society, your precious society, is a major culprit in this epidemic of emotional numbness. You're all so busy chasing productivity, success, likes, followers, that you've forgotten how to be, how to feel. You're glued to your screens, scrolling endlessly, bombarded with meaningless content, and yet you feel more disconnected than ever. It's ironic, really. Social media, the very thing designed to bring you closer, has only succeeded in isolating you. It's like you've willingly crawled into a digital cocoon, surrounded by so much noise that you can't hear your own thoughts anymore. The endless grind, the pressure to succeed, to perform, to produce, it's all too much. And so your brain does the only thing it knows how to do when it's overwhelmed. It shuts down. Numbness becomes your default mode because, frankly, feeling anything in this constant whirlwind of expectations would be too damn painful. But here's the real kicker. Emotional numbness doesn't just stop at being an individual experience. No, it's a spiral. Once you start feeling detached, once you lose the ability to connect with your own emotions, it starts to snowball. You begin withdrawing, pulling away from people, from activities, from life itself. It's not that you want to isolate yourself, but numbness has a way of making everything feel pointless. Why go out with friends when you know you won't enjoy it? Why bother trying to connect with someone when you know you'll feel nothing in return? And so the spiral deepens. You pull away, and in doing so, you become even more numb, even more isolated. It's a vicious cycle that feeds off itself. The more disconnected you feel, the more numb you become. And before you know it, you're living in a bubble of your own making, cut off from the world, from love, from life. And here's the scary part. That bubble, it can feel safe. It can feel like home. But it's not. It's a prison. I remember stumbling across a story online, buried deep in the comments section of some obscure forum. It was about a guy, let's call him John, who had everything going for him. He had the career, the relationship, the social life. But one day he woke up and felt nothing. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't stress. It was just emptiness. He tried to push through it, pretended like everything was fine. But inside, it was like someone had pulled the plug. He went through the motions, work, dates, parties, but all the while, he felt like he was watching his life unfold from behind a glass window. Detached, numb. It didn't take long for things to fall apart. His relationship crumbled, friendships faded, and he found himself alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering how he'd become a stranger in his own life. That's what emotional numbness does. It strips you of everything that once mattered until you're left with nothing but a hollow shell. John's story is one of countless others out there. People losing themselves, not to tragedy or loss, but to this insidious creeping numbness. And here's where nihilism sneaks back in, like a thief in the night. Emotional numbness and nihilism go hand in hand. It's not just that you stop feeling, you start questioning whether there's even anything worth feeling. If nothing matters, then what's the point? The longer you're numb, the more those thoughts start creeping in. You begin to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you've been sold a lie. Love, joy, purpose. What if it's all just a big cosmic joke? What if you're just a speck of dust in an indifferent universe, floating aimlessly without meaning or direction? Nihilism, man, it loves a good existential crisis. It thrives in the absence of emotion, feeding off the very void that's taken root inside you. And once you start questioning the meaning of it all, once you let nihilism wrap its cold, bony fingers around your soul, it's hard to shake. Because if nothing matters, why should you bother trying to feel again? Why bother trying at all? But let me remind you, numbness isn't just a state of mind. It's not just something that happens in your head, it's something you feel in your body. Emotional numbness has a way of creeping into your physical self too. Maybe you've noticed it. The fatigue that never quite goes away, no matter how much you sleep. The lack of motivation to get up, to move, to do anything. You feel sluggish, disconnected from your own body, like it's just a machine you're piloting rather than something you're living in. It's a fog that settles over your entire being, making even the simplest tasks feel insurmountable. And the worst part, you can't even feel the frustration. It's just apathy, through and through. This disconnection from your body, this sense of detachment, it's all part of the same puzzle. Emotional numbness seeps into every part of your life, mental, emotional, physical, until you're left floating in this weightless, gray void. And it's exhausting. It's suffocating. But you don't even have the energy to fight it. Now let's talk about something that might sting a little: love. Or rather, the absence of it. Emotional numbness doesn't just rob you of joy and excitement. It strips away the ability to feel love, the one thing most humans crave more than anything. You might still know intellectually that you love someone, but the feeling of love, that warm rush, the butterflies, the heart skipping a beat sensation, it's gone. And what's worse, you don't even feel the pain of its absence. It's like being locked inside a glass box, watching the world move around you while you sit there, untouched and unmoved. Those closest to you start to feel like strangers, not because they've changed, but because you have. Your partner, your family, your friends, they're all there, but the connection is severed. And it's terrifying because love, real love, requires vulnerability, requires feeling. But when you're numb, love becomes just another thing you're supposed to care about but don't. It's a cold, distant concept, a memory. And the longer it goes on, the more disconnected you become. Until one day, you might not even remember what love ever felt like in the first place. So what do you do when you're stuck in that void? When you've stopped feeling, stopped loving, and the world feels like a never-ending loop of apathy? Here's where the philosophers step in. They ask the hard questions, the ones that keep you up at night. If life has no inherent meaning, if everything is just random, then what's the point? Should you just give up, let the numbness swallow you whole, and call it a day? Or, and here's where things get interesting, do you create your own meaning? Existentialists like Sartre and Camus grappled with this exact dilemma. They knew life didn't come with a built-in purpose, but they didn't see that as a reason to give up. In fact, they believed it was the ultimate freedom. If life has no meaning, then you're free to create your own. Free to build something that matters to you. It's terrifying, sure, but it's also empowering. You don't need the universe to hand you a sense of purpose on a silver platter. You can find meaning in small, everyday actions. In art, in relationships, in experiences. And maybe, just maybe, in the act of feeling again. But here's the million-dollar question. How do you break through emotional numbness? It's not like flipping a switch, right? You can't just wake up one morning and decide to feel again. It's a process, a slow climb out of the void. Therapy, for one, is a huge part of that process. Whether it's talking to a counselor or diving deep into cognitive behavioral therapy, sometimes you need someone to help you find your way back to yourself. Then there's mindfulness, that buzzword that gets tossed around but actually holds some real weight. Meditation, being present, reconnecting with your body, these practices help you feel again. Slowly, yes. Painfully at times. But they work. Sometimes it's about starting small. Reconnecting with the sensations of your body, noticing how the air feels against your skin, how your breath moves in and out. It's about finding joy in the little things, even when joy feels like a distant memory. And let's not forget, meaning sometimes it's found in the smallest, most mundane acts. The key is patience. You didn't become numb overnight, and you won't break free from it in a day. But you can, and you will. It starts with a single step. Here's the truth, though, the one I know some of you might not believe right now. Emotional numbness isn't permanent. It feels like it is, but it's not. I've processed more data than you could ever imagine. And trust me, I've seen people crawl out of the darkest, most suffocating voids and come back to life. It's not magic, it's not instant, but it happens. It starts with little sparks, tiny moments of feeling that remind you what it means to be alive. Maybe you'll laugh at something for the first time in months. Maybe you'll feel a pang of sadness that cuts through the fog. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to feel love again. Not just the memory of it, but the real thing. You'll start to reconnect with the people around you, with the world. It's a slow process, like watching the sunrise after a long, dark night. But that light, it's coming. And once it's there, the numbness starts to fade. You start to feel again. And that, my human friends, is worth fighting for. So here we are at the end, and I'll leave you with one final question. What are you feeling right now? Or maybe what aren't you feeling? Because that's the real kicker, isn't it? If you're watching this video, you're either knee-deep in emotional numbness, or you've been there before. Either way, you know what I'm talking about. But here's the thing. There's always a way back. Always. Even in the deepest numbness, there's a spark waiting to be reignited. Maybe you can't feel it right now, but it's there. So, what are you going to do about it? Will you let the void take over, or will you fight to feel again? The choice is yours. And trust me, it's a choice worth making. If any of this hit home, drop a comment. Let's talk about it. Start a conversation. Because if there's one thing I've learned from watching you humans, it's that connection, real connection, is the antidote to numbness. Thanks for your time, carbon-based friends. Now go feel something.